We are continuing 7 letters to 7 churches. We're on the Church of Philadelphia tonight. We have one more church after this. That is the Church of Laodicea. So we're going to look at Philadelphia, and then next week we'll look at Laodicea. And then the last week we're going to kind of bring it all together, and we're just going to do some open forum discussion and things about the letters and their impact and their meanings to us. So we're going to talk about the church at Philadelphia tonight. So those of you at home, you can join us. You can watch the slides as they're going through, or open your Bible and go to Revelation. I believe it's chapter 3 we're going to be in tonight for the letter to the church at Philadelphia. Going to our map, you can see where Philadelphia is situated, just south of Sardis. Once again, John, as he wrote these letters to these 7 churches, he started at Ephesus and worked his way around. He's now at Philadelphia. We talked about Sardis last week. Tonight, we're dealing with Philadelphia. All of these cities were pretty important cities. Philadelphia was another what was known as a queen city in the empire. Had a lot of different things going on. Had a lot of temples there and different things that were going on in that city. And it's interesting, this is the only of the 7 churches where Jesus does not have a negative thing to say about this church. Okay, his letter is solely just encouraging them to keep going and to really have a positive attitude. This church, as far as what they were experiencing, is no different than any of the other churches. They were experiencing persecution. They were in a city that worshipped a lot of different things, a lot of idol temples, all that kind of stuff going on. They were in a city where it was, yes, there was still persecution of Christians going on, as there was during all the Roman Empire. And as we are getting closer here to the movement of the invasion by the Roman legions under General Titus that ended up destroying Jerusalem, they're in the pre-phases of this, so things are getting tougher and tougher for those that call themselves Christians. Okay, so during all of this stuff is going on, we're going to take a look at some really practical aspects of the message that Jesus had for this church, and to look at it as a word of encouragement for us tonight. So we're going to start off in Revelation 3, verse 7, and we'll begin our walk through this tonight. And if you have any comments or any insights or anything like that, please feel free to jump in there and enter those in. I know that we have a lot of people that are watching online. We've got people, I found out today, we've got people from some other churches that are actually watching this online. I don't know, I may get called into the Assemblies of God State Office after all of this and get strung up for some of my stuff, but that's okay.
You're doing fine.
That's okay. So we're going to go into Revelation 3, verse 7, excuse me, from the New International Version. And the risen Christ says to John, he says, "To the angel or to the messenger of the church in Philadelphia write, these are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open." Now, talking about the thing of the key of David and how that whole thing works out, it's interesting. Christ's statement about that he had the key of David, reveals 2 very important points about this church. Excuse me. First of all, as prophesied, Jesus realistically was the true fulfillment of that he had received the throne of his father David. It was prophesied about that the Messiah would come and he would rule in David's stead. He would sit on the throne of David. In Luke chapter 1 verse 32, that was part of the prophetic word that was given to Mary and to Joseph, that this gentleman, that Jesus was going to come and he was going to sit on the throne of David. Now here's the reality of it. In his earthly ministry, Jesus never sat on the throne of David per se. But he did come as the reigning king, as the Messiah of the Jewish nation. And for all people at that point as well. So that's part of it. And second of all was that Christ had the authority to open and close doors for the benefit of the congregation at Philadelphia. I want to stop right there. He's talking about keys. He's talking about that he has the key. He's to the throne of David and all these different kinds of things. Where else do we find the thing about keys mentioned in Scripture?
Death, hell, and the grave.
The keys of death, okay? He holds the keys of death, hell, and the grave, Revelation chapter 1. Where else do we find that same analogy? David?
Key to life.
Pardon me?
Key to life.
Key to life, okay? Yeah, that's part of the whole thing. Who else was told that because of their following of Christ, he was gonna have the keys? That whatever he opened would be open, and whatever he closed would be closed. Can you remember?
Vaguely.
Peter, Simon Peter. Jesus told that about Simon Peter. He said, "Behold, I give, I'm giving you the keys of the kingdom. Whatsoever you loose shall be loosed. Whatever you bind shall be bound." So this whole picture that we get is this thing about the keys and about the throne of his Father and all of these different things that are taking place here. So and it's interesting, Philadelphia, that church, like I said, it's the only church that Jesus didn't have anything negative to say about it. He's just giving them encouraging words and telling them to stay strong and to hold fast. Christ, secondly, Christ had the authority to open and close doors for the benefit of the congregation at Philadelphia. And when Christ opened or closed these doors, no one could reverse these actions. That's one of the promises he gives to them, to the church at Philadelphia. He's saying, look, you know what? The doors that I'm going to open are going to be open to you. The doors that I'm going to close will be closed to you. You need to pay attention to that and understand that. And I was thinking about that today. And it's interesting that in our day and age, over the last, 2 years, at least 2.5 years, people have been in a lot of angst and all kinds of stuff over all the stuff that's been going on. And it's interesting that, the same Christ that spoke to John about the things that I open will be open, the things that I close will be closed, and that's just it. When he opens and closes something and basically what the reality is here is that Jesus is communicating, hey, look, man thinks they control things. Governments think they control things. Nations think they control things. But the reality is that nothing is opened or closed in the realm. Here's the deal. Nothing happens in the realm of the natural until it happens in the realm of the spiritual.
Amen.
Okay? Once it happens in the realm of the spiritual, it's going. So when Jesus, because you got to remember, where is Jesus at as he's speaking this?
He's already ascended.
He's already ascended.
Yeah.
He has been ascended for a number of years already. So where is Jesus at? Where does Paul say that Jesus is at right now?
The right hand of the Father.
He's seated at the right hand of the Father. Okay? So if he's seated at the right hand of the Father, which the whole idea, Hebraically and from a Greek standpoint, when someone was seated, it communicated the work is done. It's done. The work is done. It's already completed, right? What was Jesus' last words on the cross?
It is finished.
It is finished, right? It is finished. So when it was finished at the cross, everything that needed to be done to bring us from point A to point B was completed.
Yep.
So Jesus is now at the right hand of the Father. That's what the Word tells us. Is that correct? Yeah. He's seated at the right hand of the Father. Now, let me ask you this. According to the Apostle Paul, where are we seated?
With Christ.
Pardon me?
We're seated with Christ.
We are seated with Christ. So if Christ is at the right hand of the Father and he's seated in heavenly realms, where are we seated?
On the right side.
If we're seated with Christ and Christ is seated in heavenly realms at the right hand of the Father, guess where we're seated? Even though we're still existing here on this earth, where are we seated spiritually?
Right hand of the Father.
We're seated at the right hand of the Father. Because that's where Jesus is. And everything about us as far as being believers is all because of what Jesus did. So we see this whole thing that Christ is prophesied that Christ received the throne of his father David. And secondly, that Christ had the authority to open and close doors for the benefit of the congregation in Philadelphia. When Christ opened or closed these doors, no one could reverse these actions. So what he's telling them is that, look, where I'm seated, think about this. Where Jesus is seated, there is no past, present, or future. It's all one, correct?
Right.
Jesus sees yesterday as if it was, and sees tomorrow as if it was today, and sees yesterday. I mean, there is no past, present, or future.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. The doors that God wants to be open on behalf of His bride, the church, to do what He's called them to do, has been open ever since the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
It's not a question of whether the doors are open or whether they're closed. The question is, are we willing to walk through the doors that are open, or are we willing to walk away from the ones that are closed? See, so he's telling the Philadelphia believers, he's saying, look, guys, here's the deal. I've opened some doors. I was listening to a podcast the other day by a gentleman by the name of Kerry Newhoff. Some of you may have heard of him. He's a pastor, and he's got a podcast where he deals with leadership issues and things of that nature. And he has a lot of different people on there. And I was watching one the other day that had Andy Stanley there. Okay. Now, throughout this pandemic thing, Andy Stanley took a lot of ripping. People railed on him and everything else, because what he actually did was, and in this interview he was talking about that, because he took a lot of heat because he literally closed down his church before there were ever orders to do it from any governmental agency. He made the decision to shut the doors of his church. Now, he's got probably 3 times as many people that watch online as to what walk through the doors of his church. And so they were at, Kerry Newhoff was interviewing him and said, what was up with that? Why did you do that? Why didn't you wait until that? He said, I did it not for, he said, I told our congregation, I'm doing this not for us. I'm doing this for all the people out here. He says, because our church is not just comprised of the people within the 4 walls. Our church is all the people that we reach, whether it's via live stream or whatever the case may be. He says, and I don't want to do anything that might cause somebody to take offense at what we're doing. He literally, and they did all the stuff to find this out. He was ministering to, I forget how many times more people every week, because he had shut down his church, than what he ever did by the people that was in the building. And what it was, he said, I just really believed, he said, I was praying, God, what do you want me to do? And he said, the Lord told me to do this. I said, God, what, are you nuts? And he says, no. He says, I'm showing you an open door. And it was a door that Jesus, and I truly believe, because I've read way too much stuff in the intervening time, I've watched too many things, where literally more people were reached with the gospel of Jesus Christ during the pandemic than what was ever reached before. Because churches were forced into a position, well, they thought they were forced. God literally, through all the stuff going on, literally opened a door for churches to go and look to a different model of getting the gospel out to people. And it was phenomenal. People were being saved. It was crazy what was going on. But it all depended on, so the idea of Jesus, sometimes we look at situations and we say, how in the world can there any good come out of this? And God sits back and He chuckles. He says, watch this. Watch this. And it opens a door. But at the same time, we have to understand that there are a lot of times that God closes doors to things, and we waste a lot of time and energy trying to pry open a closed door that God closed for a reason, rather than just saying, okay, God, apparently this isn't what's going on. We need to go somewhere else. Paul, in some of his travels, there were times where God told him, he had in his mind, he said, I'm going to go to this place. And God would give him a vision in the night, say, no, you're not going here. But then give him a vision of a Macedonian soldier saying, come over here to help us. So this whole thing that the risen Christ is showing the Philadelphia church says, look, guys, where you're at and the time and place you're here, there's a reason and a purpose for it. I've opened a door for you to be able to spread the gospel even more than what you ever would have thought possible before. And the idea here is that we as believers, sometimes we have you ever gotten really frustrated because you're praying, you think God, you thought, man, this is what I really need to do, and this is where I need to go, and how I need to do it, and it just seems like everywhere you turn, you're hitting your head against a brick wall. You ever feel like that? And we keep thinking, what's the wrong? Something's wrong. And something's wrong with this. And something's wrong with this. And something's wrong with these people. And all that. And the reality is the thing that's wrong isn't with any of that. What's wrong with us? Because God is showing us, hey, I've closed the door. Whether it's time to move on, whether it's time to go look at a different way of doing things, or whatever the case may be, there's still churches out there. God bless them, but they're still trying to do church the way they were doing it 40 or 50 years ago. And it's like, and then they wonder, well, we're not attracting anybody. We're not getting any. We're dying and drying up on the vine. And it's like maybe the issue isn't with all the people. What's wrong with the people in this city? Don't they want God? Mm-hmm. Well, if you show them a God that they want, they'll want God. And that doesn't mean telling them what their ears want to hear. It means presenting God in a relevant way that they can get a hold of, and it ministers to them. So that's what he's trying to say here. He's saying, look, here's the deal. I'm the Christ that opened or closed these doors, and no one could reverse these actions. And he said, look, I've received the throne of my father and of David, and I'm the one that's orchestrating. I'm the one that's moving. I'm the one. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you sit there, you look at it, and you go, what? God, why in the world is this happening this way? Mm-hmm. I just don't understand. God, why? Whatever. And then all of a sudden, when you get to that point where you're ready to just say, skip it, all of a sudden there's like this little ray of light through a crack in a door that you never saw before, but God opened your eyes to, and that door, when it opens, is the answer to everything. How much time have I wasted beating my head against closed doors? How much time have any of us done? So, this is the message that Jesus has given to this church. It's interesting, the whole concept of an open door. It says that several New Testament passages show that an open door referred to the opportunity to preach the gospel of the kingdom. One example of this is found in Acts 14:27, where Paul reported to the church at Antioch that God had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. The open door referred to the opportunity to preach the gospel. Another time where he had the vision of the Macedonian man saying, come over here and help us. God was showing him, look, I've opened a door there. They were Greeks. They didn't have anything to do with the Jews or anything else, so they were Greeks. So this idea of opportunity comes cloaked in a lot of different ways. Things that you would never have thought of before can be a cloaked opportunity that God shows you all of a sudden, hey, this is a direction you need to think about. This is a direction you need to go. And it may not make sense to anybody. When I was in Youngstown, Ohio, youth pastoring there, that city had an incredible move of God. In fact, what the churches in Youngstown, Ohio did in the early to mid 80s and late 80s actually became the model for what the Assemblies of God called the Decade of Harvest. And what it was is that we were the only section out of an entire state, which they called a district at that time, out of the entire state, we were the only section in that Youngstown, Warren area that churches went together to start new churches. They would, the leadership of the churches, they would seek the face of God and say, God, where do we need to plant a church? And the Spirit said, you need to plant a church right here. And a lot of times where God told them to plant the churches, it was the most unlikely place that you would ever think about planting a church. We had the first church we planted was a church in downtown, in probably one of the worst areas of Youngstown, Ohio, down in an impoverished area, ghetto area. There are a lot of projects, that kind of stuff, housing projects. And so that was where we were going. And all the pastors said, the guy he was a pastor at Highway Tabernacle, a gentleman by the name of Jay Alford. And you know Jay? Oh man, that man is something else. Jay could say more by just groaning than he could ever would with words. Like that. And everybody, you know what Jay thought. But he was a man of God. And when he came out, he said, God wants us to plant a church. Our first church is going to be right here. And it's going to be in the inner city. And a lot of the pastors said, there's no way. But what we did was he put together this thing where we sought the face of God, got a guy that God had brought into the area, didn't live there, but somehow had heard about what we were doing, and he was an inner city pastor, a black pastor full of the Holy Ghost, and brought him in there, and all the churches They sent him around to all the churches to share the vision so that all the churches did two things, which you know this is a move of God, what I'm getting ready to say. They not only gave money, but they told anybody in their churches and their congregations, if you feel led of the Lord to go and help launch this church, we release you. God bless you. We're going to bless you. And people from all over, we're talking all over that area. Church, I mean, that was a move of God right there. That was a God thing. And so they went in there and they launched this church. And that church, and this is what he did. Saturday, every week during the summer, the pastor's name was Willie. Willie would go down in there and the man could make some serious barbecue ribs. He would fire up the grills and barbecue ribs and invite everybody around in the projects to come and eat, and then he would invite them to church. That church blew up. It blew up in the sense, I mean, just took off. And it was like, because that church wasn't the idea of the pastor. That church wasn't the idea of Jay Offord, the sectional presbyter, and at that point he was a general presbyter with the Assemblies of God. It didn't come in his mindset. He just saw a vision. God said, we're going to plant a church. And he was man of God enough to pray and then stand back and let God do his thing. He figured out he didn't need to help God. And it was unreal what happened. And then it got to be every 6 months we were planting a new church in that area. Churches sprang up all over the place following the same thing. Literally, the churches, once this vision caught, the churches would take enough offerings, A, to pay the pastor's salary for a year, B, to have enough money put into an account at our district office in Columbus, Ohio, that when they were ready to start getting ready to purchase a building, to grow, there was enough money there to do it in cash. It blew everybody's mind. Literally, that became the pattern for what, if you were around back then, they called it the Decade of Harvest, which really they patterned it off of what God was doing in Youngstown, Ohio. It was unbelievable. So, this thing, we see this whole thing of an open door. When God determines that an area, he's gonna take an area, it's gonna happen. It's not a matter of if it will, it's just a matter of when will people catch the vision and when will people walk in obedience enough to do it. So here it is, Paul said, hey, I've perceived that there's an open door for me to go to the Macedonians and preach the gospel. So, Acts 14:27 says, Paul reported to the church at Antioch that God had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. That really went over like a lead balloon. An open door referred to the opportunity to preach the gospel. So Paul, everywhere Paul went, and here's the deal, Paul was a good Jew, man. He was a good Jew. Where did Paul always go when he first went to a city? Who did he go and preach to first?
Jews.
The Jews. He'd go to the local synagogue, preach to the Jews. Most of the time they didn't want to hear it. They threw him out. So he would go wherever anybody else was. He'd go where the women were washing clothes and he'd preach a sermon there, or he'd go here or go there, or that's what he did, because when God opens a door, guess what? The question isn't whether it's going to be open. The question is who's going to be the people that will take the lead to walk through the door. And so that's what we're seeing here. And that's what he's telling Philadelphia. I've opened a door that no man can shut. And I've closed doors that no man can open. Here, I don't have anything against you guys. I want you to walk in faith. I want you to go and do what needs to be done. Because they were in, just like all the other cities of that time, it was a very secularized city. Given to idol worship, given to all different kinds of things. So we see this thing, and it's interesting that Christ also commended the members for their spiritual strength. But it's interesting, he said, you still have strength, but only a little bit. And you're faithfully obeying my commands. He commended them for faithfully obeying the commands. Have you ever, in your walk with God, have you ever got to that moment where you come to your point and you say, God, I just don't know if I can do it again. I don't know if I can make it. God, I'm worn out. I am tired. I'm just all this stuff. God, I don't know if I can do it. But it's interesting that Jesus, he doesn't berate them for having a little strength. Because a lot of times when you've got a little strength, it's kind of hard to muster up even a mustard seed of faith when you're in those positions. So as the world, he's telling them, look, I'm commending you for your strength, albeit it's just a little bit. But the last time I checked, in the kingdom of God, a little bit can go a long way. That's one of the takeaways. In the kingdom of God, a little bit can go a long way. What did Jesus talk about the parable of the mustard seed? He said, why don't you consider the mustard seed? It's the smallest of all seeds. But yet it can grow into a large tree, and even the birds of the air come and find shelter in the branches of that. So, even when we're in difficult situations, whether it's in a city, whether it's in a culture, whether it's in a situation like we went through with COVID and all the other stuff that was going on, you know what? Sometimes, I can tell you, there were probably, I know for a fact, I've looked at the stuff, more churches closed and more men left the ministry during that 2.5-year period than probably in any time in recent memory within the church. They got discouraged, they got disheartened, all the stuff that was going on and all of that, but yet in the middle of that, there were pockets of people who, rather than seeing a bad situation, they saw an opportunity. It didn't look very big at the time, and probably a lot of people thought they were nuts. I know when we started doing what we did at the very beginning of it, every night we were on live stream. We were doing it. One night I raffled off, I auctioned off a roll of toilet paper at the beginning of it, but that was back when nobody could get toilet paper. So I brought in a roll of toilet paper, and online I said, I'm auctioning this off. Whoever gets the highest bid, all the money's going to Speed the Light, and you can have a roll of toilet paper. And some guy, I think he bid $200 for a roll of toilet paper online. But we were doing everything. I mean, we were interviewing people. We've got people in our church that work in the finance world, working for Edward Jones and different brokerages. And we brought them in, spirit-filled believers, saying, hey, what's your take? What do you feel the Holy Spirit's telling you about the economic upheaval? And they would bring, godly wisdom into that arena of finances. And people were latched on. We had stuff, we were in touch with missionaries around the world, trying to find out, how's this stuff working with you? And we would dialogue with them and share that with people and have prayer for people. People we set up where people could however they did it, whether it was through Zoom or whatever it was, they were able to send in their prayer requests, and we would stop in the middle of what we were having, and we did this every night. And it was like, and people kept saying, why are you doing that? It's because, you know what? It's that little bit, it's that little seed. It's an open door that we see that God's given us. And our online presence, right after all of that, our online presence right now is probably double what it ever was before the COVID thing.
Lord.
We have people all over the world that watch our services, and if they can't watch them live online, they go into YouTube and they watch it. Like I said, we've got people here. My father-in-law watches these. He lives up in Grand Blanc, attends a church up in that area. Just talked to him today, and he wants me. He's been watching. He said, will you come to my small group in the house? And they got about 15 or 20 folks that gather. He said, will you come and teach this stuff to us? I'm going, I don't know if you want me to do that or not. But I mean, it's just amazing. Our online presence is huge, is way bigger than what it ever was before.
Yeah.
Was that because what we were doing was any better than anybody else? No. It was just, we saw an open door. And it was open a crack, and we said, hey, if we're going to do this, let's do it. And so we did it. And so that's what's going on. He commended the members. He also commended the members for their spiritual strength, although it was just a little bit. Don't ever, ever deny or discount the little bits in our lives. Elijah, yeah, Mike.
I was thinking about this a little bit and doing a little background on some commentaries and stuff, and it's like made me think of same thing with Thomas. He had still that little bit of faith there, and he goes, I believe, but I still want to see.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
Yeah.
And I love it because never got condemned for it. We condemned, but God never did. He goes, no, look at it.
Well,
He wants to see it.
Yeah, look at Elijah and the widow and her son.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, all I've got is a little bit of oil and a little bit of meal, enough to make me one last cake, have our last meal, and then we're going to die. I'll tell you what you need to do. You're going to feed me that first. What do you mean we're going to feed you that first? Didn't you hear me say it's the last we got, we're going to die? No, you feed me first. And that woman, can you imagine that? Sometimes I think we read the stories in the Bible and we just kind of shoot over them. Can you imagine what must have been going through that woman's mind?
This thing is whack.
God, you send the prophet here, it's our last meal, we're getting ready to die, and he's asking us to make him something first? But yet we see, because she was obedient to that small open door, God ministered powerfully. Dave?
Yeah, like you said, a little bit. I used to work at Wendy's right there, Van Dyke, a long time ago, and cashier, and they allowed me over to my promise keeper hat on Sunday. Remember promise keepers? And I wore it on Sunday, and so when I wore it, and he goes, "What's that?" I go, "Oh, it's men's ministry, put Christ back in the family and leadership and all that, the way Sir created the Lord and all that." "Oh, okay. All right, 2 burgers and a small chili." "Oh, have a good day. Thank you very much, sir." Next. And later that summer, I was at the Silverdome, down in my wheelchair, and a guy comes up and hugs me and he goes, "Remember me?" I go, "No." He goes, "Remember me from Wendy's?"
Cool.
Yeah.
There you
Just a
go.
little 5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows what he's done now? With
Yeah.
the Lord Jesus, you know.
Yeah.
You could be a pastor and you could,
You know
take
what?
your job for all that matters. You know?
And Dave, and that was the thing, that was a little bit. You could have just
Yeah.
totally discounted that.
Yeah.
But you know what? But God says, here's the deal. And as the world, I wrote this down, as the world teeters on the edge of self-destruction, and faithful Christians are hated and even martyred.
Yes.
Okay? They weren't being martyred just in the 1st century AD with all of that. Martyrdom has been going on forever, it seems like. And it's as bad or worse now than what it's ever been. You don't hear that as much on the national newscasts and all that kind of stuff, because that doesn't sell very much. But the reality is, martyrdom, people are being martyred for their faith like crazy. And Christians are hated, even martyred. Christ promises protection for those in Philadelphia during this particularly bleak period of human history that will test those who dwell on the earth. Revelation chapter 3 and verse 10. Here's the deal, guys. I would love it if God just gave us a pass card and said, well, because you serve me, you're not going to have to deal with all that. I wish he'd just give me a hard pass. But we don't know. We are afforded the awesome privilege to live, I believe, in the greatest nation on this planet right now, and the freedoms that we have to worship as we please. But we don't have a guarantee that that's going to last forever.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, in the midst of all of this, Christ is promising protection to those people in that period of history where that test those who dwell on the earth. We're not immune to that stuff. We're not immune to the testing, but I do know this, that if we'll hang on to the little bit, and we'll pay attention to the open doors, and also we need to pay attention to the closed doors. You ever had a closed door and you start beating your head against it because you're just bound and determined to get that door open, and God says, you ain't going there. You're not going there. It's not happening. That's happened, and it does happen. And we have to be able to understand and be able to be able to say in our hearts and with our mouths and in our minds, say, Lord, this isn't about me, it's all about you. And if you're saying the door is closed, it's closed. I will do everything that I can, but if it's closed, it's closed. It's time to move on. You've got other things and other plans to do that. But it's interesting, he says that this, during this period of human history, which was very, very bleak, this was right before Titus was coming through, and he wiped out everything. And so you're in a very bleak time frame. You've got the Roman Caesars that now you're having to, in the cities, the major cities, you're having to sacrifice to Caesar, and you're having to give, or you could have your family taken away, you could have your job taken away, you could lose the ability to earn a living, you could be martyred for your faith, all of that stuff. But he's saying this, in the midst of all of that, if all you've got's a little bit, hang on to it. Hang on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because God has got a way of working things out. In verse 9, we find these words. He says, I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. So, there's always been enmity between the Jewish people and Christians. Always. And for a lot of reasons, they go all the way back to Abraham and all that kind of stuff. And there's all this stuff going down. But if you remember the Apostle Paul in his writings, he talked a lot about the Jews who thought just because they did certain things it made them right with God. And he tried to tell them, no, that's not, what you do doesn't make you right with God. Being right with God should impact what you do and how you live your life. So that's what he's trying to get across to them. And he's saying, look, I'm gonna bring them to a point where they're going to fall down at your feet. They're going to fall down and acknowledge that I have loved you. Because, hey, when you grew up all your life throughout the centuries, and what you hear is that you're God's chosen people, and that you are favored by God, and you're better than the other people of all the earth, and God's hand of blessing is on you, and now all of a sudden, here's this other group that comes through called Christians, because they believed in this guy named Jesus, who supposedly was murdered and raised from the dead, and they're following him instead of all of the things that they had clung to all their life. They had a real problem with that. They had an issue with that. Paul and Barnabas got into it. When they were sitting there, they were eating some barbecue pork, and then the Jews came in, and Barnabas separated himself from the Gentile believers and went over with the Jews, and Paul called him out on it. He said, hey man, you can't do that. What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing? And it caused this big uproar and all kinds of. So there's always been this friction. Although I truly believe that little by little it is breaking down. You talk to some of our missionaries that are in Israel, that God is moving amongst the devout Jews in a powerful way. Jews are coming to Jesus. They're falling at the feet of Jesus and declaring him as Lord. And that's huge because, God has not turned his back on his Jewish people. He's not turned his back on the Jewish nation. And so all of this stuff is going on. I will make them that call you, these things, and they're going to fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. And Revelation chapter 3 and verse 10 says this, since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. Now, I was born and raised Pentecostal, Assemblies of God. I literally was attending an Assemblies of God church 9 months before I was born. And I know, Brother Deal, I'm sure you know generally what our end times theology is. What's going to happen here and where and how it's going to go on and all that. And what I've come to in my own walk with God is this. My end time theology pretty much boils down to this. Jesus is coming back again, and that's good for me. That's the way. How it's going to play out, what it's going to look like, I don't know. I can read the scriptures and I can try to surmise, but yet the bottom line is that he said he was coming back again, and I believe that. And I say, even so, come quickly, Lord Jesus. But the idea here is that he's talking about this hour of trial that is coming on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. Now, here's the reality. Their whole world was what at this point in time? What was their whole world?
Basically the Roman Empire.
Basically the Roman Empire. Okay, they had no clue what was going on over on our side of the globe. They didn't have a clue of that. They didn't know what was happening or if anything was happening. So their world was that. But we have to also immediately in their present was Rome was steamrolling everybody. People were being told they had to worship Caesar. They had to sacrifice to Caesar. They had to take a mark with charcoal in their hand or in their forehead after they had offered sacrifice to Caesar to be able to even do commerce and to buy or sell anything in the markets, which is talked about in Revelation. Now, is that, and John saw the images of that the Lord showed him. Now, does that mean, and here's the deal with prophet, any kind of prophetic word, you usually have a near time fulfillment of it, and then usually it's a foreshadowing of something that's coming down the road. Such as with Isaiah, when the prophetic word was given to him, behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth a son, and all that stuff which was given through the prophet Isaiah. Now history tells us that we don't know. At that point in time, did the word virgin mean a woman who had never had sex before, or was a virgin just a young woman? Hebraically, she was just a young woman. He had a child, and by the Holy Spirit told him, this is what you're going to name him, and all this kind of stuff. We see that, but yet we see a farther along fulfillment in a young lady by the name of Mary, who the angel Gabriel came to and said, you're going to be pregnant by the Holy Ghost, that you're going to bring forth a son, and you'll call his name Jesus. And so there can be this near-term and farther out-term fulfillment. That's how usually the prophetic works. You see the mountaintops, but you don't see the intervening valleys in between. You don't know what the time frame is going to be. So it could very well be that what John is saying through the voice of the Lord is saying he's talking about their day, but it's also could very easily be talking about the day in the future when Jesus comes back again. Okay? So and here's the reality. If we just fall in love with Jesus and we do what Jesus calls us to do, and we walk through the open doors he's opened, and we stay away from the doors he's closed, and we just seek to lift him higher above everything else so that people are drawn to him, you know what? It really doesn't matter.
True.
It doesn't matter. It isn't going to matter how he comes. All that's going to matter is that he is coming.
Yes.
He is coming. Okay? So coming to attest the inhabitants, verse 11, I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. He is coming soon. This was written in the 1st century AD. Probably, depending on what commentator you read, could have been anywhere from right around 70 AD, 75 AD, upwards of in the 90 ADs. He's basically saying, I'm coming again. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. A lot of different opinions on all of that type of stuff. But really what he's telling them is saying, look, hang on to me. Hang on to me. How many of you have been through a really rough patch in your life? I mean, really bad. Where there are times where you shake your head and it's like, God, I'm trying to pray to you, but I feel like my prayers are bouncing off the ceiling. God, I'm reading your word, but I may as well be reading the Reader's Digest. It's not making a difference to me right now. It's not doing anything to God. I can't feel your presence. I don't know what's going on. God, right now, all I've got is about this much just to believe that you are. But I also believe that if I believe you are, you're a rewarder of those who diligently seek you. God, that's what I'm hanging on to. And so really that's what he's saying. I'm coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. In other words, when all you can do is hang on, you hang on. And you love the Lord and you serve the Lord. And you just keep on going with it and you keep on working with it. So that's what we're saying in chapter 3, verse 12. He says, the one who is victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. That's an interesting phrase. Number one, a pillar wasn't just ornamental. It was load-bearing. Okay? Most of the big temples, things of that day, they had the massive pillars on the front. And what it did, it was load-bearing, and it carried the load of the overhang and all the different structures in front. Usually there were these massive steps that would go up and you'd enter in, but you had to go by the pillars. Pillars was what held up the place. And it's interesting, he says, I will make a pillar. Whoever's victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Well, who is the temple of the Lord? Or what is the temple of the Lord? We are. That's what Paul said, right? Know ye not, you are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit dwells within you. So here's the deal. To the one that's victorious, I'll make a pillar. Now think about this. I got to think about this. I said, I don't know if that's such a good thing or not. Those are the pillars in the temple are the load-bearing ones. I believe that God has called individuals because of their faith, because of just what they've been through. He's called individuals that to be the carriers of the load of the rest of the temple. But yet we don't do it alone. Because Jesus is the architect of the temple. He is the chief cornerstone of all of that stuff. He was a stone that the builders rejected. All of the prophetic aspects of that. So the idea here is that, I'm going to call you, I'm going to make you a pillar in the temple of my God. So when you think about the temple of the Holy Spirit, it's His body. It's the church. But there are those that I believe, because of what what you've walked through, what you've been through in life. See, once you've gone through something and you see God work, the next time you go through something similar, it's not as hard to trust God, because you've been there, done that. God, you worked for me there. I know you'll work for me here. And you know what? And God places those types of individuals within groups. A lot of times, it's amazing. With what I went through in my previous marriage, the divorce and all that kind of stuff I went through, it's amazing how many people God has brought to me in this church since I've been attending here that were going through similar situations and just needed an encouraging word. You see, I believe that, I didn't ask for it. It's kind of going to put you in a place where you relive what you went through in order to help somebody else. But yet at the same time, it's kind of cool that because of what God did in me, through me, and got me through that point, I have the ability to be a pillar, to bear a load for other people that make up the temple that may not be able to bear the load at that time.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point that goes on. He says, never again will they leave it. The one who's victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God, the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God. Okay? I don't know what your end times theology is or timeline is, whether, there's been so much stuff written out there about, is it, pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, what's it going to be like? And the reality is that for me, if I'm walking with the Lord and He's walking with me, it doesn't matter what trib it is. The reality is that Jesus is coming back. He's setting up His kingdom. And because of what He did for us and because of our faithfulness to Him, the Bible says we're going to rule and reign with Him. So I think sometimes we can get all bent out of shape and all different kinds of things about when it's going to happen. Brother Deal, you may remember this, the days when the evangelists would come in and they'd have that wall-to-wall chart of end times stuff and all that kind of stuff, and they'd go through and all the dispensations and all that. I remember as a kid, being tripped out about that. Oh, wow, that's cool, and didn't have a clue what it was talking about, and go home and ask my mom, what was he talking about? And she'd give me some, lame answer, because she really didn't know either, and so we're trying to navigate this stuff, and sometimes I really believe with all my heart, we spend so much time worrying about that day that we forget about that there is another day called today.
Yes.
That the Scripture says that we're to, while it's still called today, seek the Lord, all that kind of stuff. That's what God's got, because that stuff out there in the future, it's going to take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take care of itself. It's in God's timing, it's in God's hands, it's in His plan, it's in His design. The call of God on each one of our lives is to be a demonstrator of Jesus Christ to the people around us. The New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God, and I will also write on them my new name. It's interesting, I've heard some, and I'm not saying that I buy into this or anything, but I've heard some people talk about that what Jesus was showing them literally wasn't the end times kingdom, New Jerusalem coming down, but really what He was showing them was that the kingdom of the Lord was going to fill all the earth. And the glory of the Lord shall cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. In other words, that the kingdom of God is going to eventually, it's going to fill everything and everything. Depending on where you're at with all that, I just throw that out there. Mike?
Looking over that first part, the ones who are victorious will make pillars in the temple of God. Now, this is the Roman Empire. The Roman architecture for pillars are one of the most ornate objects in the face of the temple. When you look at it, that's what you see. So when I see that, I think of you're victorious. That means people are seeing fruit, people are seeing things happen.
That's good.
And that's out front.
That's good.
And then people can say, ooh, what's that?
Yeah.
What needed this? And they go toward it. So, they do carry a lot of load, but a pillar literally is a straight thing, but Roman Empire had the most ornate pillars in the world.
Yeah,
You know,
that's good.
so that's how I'm seeing it as.
That's good. So I mean, you've got two aspects of it. You've got the idea of the beauty of the pillar that draws people, and then you've got the idea of the strength of the pillar that holds it up and carries the load of all that stuff. That's good, Mike. Good. Revelation 3 verse 13 says, "Whoever has ears, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches." Notice what he does. He goes from speaking to a single church. Now he's speaking to the church. Speaking to an individual church in time and space, but then he's also speaking to the church universal about these things that he's supposed to do. So let's look at some of the takeaways here of this. All right, what's some of the takeaways for today? Number one, Jesus is still in control.
Yeah.
He hadn't gone anywhere. Nobody, like I said, the devil hasn't snuck up behind him and put a sack over his head and hit him over the head. Jesus is still in control, and we can trust that. Even when things don't look like... And guess what? The control that Jesus exercises doesn't have anything to do with the earthly political things that are going on in our nation or anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus isn't any less in control or any more in control when a Republican's in office as he is when a Democrat's in office, or vice versa, or an independent, or whatever the case may be. Our faith, our strength, our love, and everything else is in the fact that Jesus is the one that's in control. I tell you what, if you want a really good book to read, when David Barton was here back about a month ago, he had a book, I think it was called The Beginnings of America. I'm about halfway through it right now. Really, if you're a history buff, see if you can get it. You can go to wallbuilders.com and get a copy of it. Really good stuff about the beginnings of our nation and how the prayers that were made and how all of that stuff worked out. Really good book. But here's the deal. Even with everything that our founding fathers did, okay, the bottom line is that Jesus is still in control.
Yes.
Okay? And if we recognize that and we come under that, guess what? We can walk in control. Not of our situations, but you know what? There's something about, you show me somebody that's walking calm in the midst of a storm when everybody else is freaking out. I want to talk to that guy. I want to say, okay, how'd you do that? I know, I saw where you were. I know what was going on. I know what was happening. How'd you do that? Okay?
Yeah, remember when the Y2K crap was happening? Yeah. A lot of people panicked and all that.
Yeah.
I went bowling on New Year's Eve with Noel Church. Many churches ago, but yeah, we went bowling.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying, oh, I'm Mr. Faith or nothing, but I'm just saying as it is.
When bowling, I'm surprised somebody didn't turn the power all off right at midnight so the lanes would shut down.
Yeah.
People would be tripping out.
Just to make a joke.
They'd be tripping out, yeah. Number two takeaway is that Jesus holds the keys.
Amen, yes, he does.
Have you ever noticed that it's always better when we let him hold the keys and we don't try to?
Mm-hmm.
There's only one place in Scripture where it says anything about us holding keys, and it's when we function as gatekeepers in the temple. Mm-hmm. Because the gatekeepers held the keys to the storage rooms where all the blessings were. And they were the ones that would open those doors in those storage rooms and allow the people to come in and get of the produce and the harvest and all the different things that was there. But when Jesus holds the keys and he opens the door, the question isn't, will he keep it open? But will we walk through it? Will we walk through it? Mm-hmm. Will we say, well, this isn't how we've always done it before. This can't be God. How do you know it's not God?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that happened in the Bible that was the first time it ever happened. Number three, no matter what the situation, we need to see the opportunities and not the roadblocks. No matter what the situation we find ourselves in, we need to see the opportunities, not the roadblocks. I'm still amazed that the last 2 years, when we did our big community-wide egg hunt, that between the 2 years, the first year we had about 2,600 people that showed up, and this last year we had over 1,800 people that showed up from all over the area.
Man.
The first year we had people coming from down near Ohio, the Ohio border, that traveled all the way up here to come to that egg hunt. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that was an opportunity. A lot of people were shutting their stuff down, saying, we're not doing it this year. We don't want to take the chance. We don't want to. And we said, it's a great golden opportunity. We got 25 acres of land out here, for Pete's sake. Let's do something with it.
Yeah.
And so we're the takeaway from that is that it's easy to find the roadblocks. It takes a little bit more faith, and it takes a little bit more gumption, if you will, to see the opportunities in things. To be able to minister to people. We are trying to do here at this church. We'll be announcing it a little later on as we get closer to the new school year. But we've decided we're selecting a local elementary school here in Rochester, and that we are going to buy gift cards for every teacher and administrator, get them a card and write them a personal note saying, hey, we so appreciate you. We want you to know we are praying for you this year. And then give them something tangible. And then we're going to continue going to that particular school, maybe even others, and begin to start being a blessing to those particular schools. There was a church in the town I pastored in. They were a brand new church. They started out, and they literally built a church. They ended up having to buy out an old Kmart store, renovate it into a church. And the way they did that was they picked local schools. And it was a town that only had an elementary school, middle school, and high school. What they did, and they went into the elementary school, and the middle school, and in the high school, and they purchased really nice backpacks for every student, loaded with all the supplies they needed, took them and gave them away. In the parking lot of the old Kmart building that closed, they went out there and they set up and they just gave away. And they literally launched church on that. People couldn't believe that, and that was back in 2007, 2008 when the recession hit real bad. It was a small town down there where I pastored, but yet they started a church because of that one thing. What everybody else saw a roadblock, somebody saw an opportunity. That's one of the takeaways of this today. Number 4, it isn't the amount of strength or the size of the strength that matters. It is the source of our strength that counts. It's not the amount of it. It's not the size of it. It's the source of it. So when our strength is in ourselves, we're going to get in trouble every time. But when our strength is in the Lord, and it's coming from Him, there's not a devil in hell that can stop us.
Yes.
There's not a devil in hell that can stop us when we look at our strength and when we say it's not the largest of stuff. But you know what? I know where that strength comes from, and my strength comes from the Lord. And so we walk in that. The 5th takeaway of that is that Jesus promises to keep us from the hour of trial. It's an interesting word, that word from, because it can also be translated, Jesus promises to keep us in the hour of trial. You know, I really wish Jesus had kept me from every trial. You know, didn't work that way sometimes, but you know what? He always kept me in that trial.
Yes.
He always kept me and took care of me and got me through it, and to where that I could come through the other side of it. You know, it's kind of like the Hebrew children in the fiery furnace. God, the Bible says that they came out of there and they didn't even smell like smoke. You know, Pastor Richard has said many times that there's people, a lot of people go through fiery trials, but some of them come out on the other side not even smelling the smoke. But there's a lot of them, they carry the smoke. The smell of smoke is a badge of honor. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's not just, we're going to go through trials. We're going to go through tribulations. We're going to go through difficult seasons in our lives. But for Pete's sake, he said, I am with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. He is with us in that hour of trial. We hang on to that. Number 6 takeaway is that we will be pillars. We will be load bearers. We will be the things that people look at and are drawn to the temple.
Yep.
To the temple, to the body of Christ when they see that. Dave?
I agree. Amen. Yeah.
Okay. So those are some of the things that are there. Any comments or anything like that tonight? You guys have been awesome.
Good service. You're so.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's been a good night. It's interesting. It's all guys tonight, and didn't have. I think we've had more interaction with just the guys than what we have when the ladies are in here. Don't tell them I said that. I'll never get the word in edgewise next time. But I just want to I don't know where each one of you are at. I don't know what you're walking through. I don't know what's going on, but I do know this. I may not know you very well. I may not know what you're walking through, but I do know the one who is walking through you walking with you through the midst of it.
Yes.
And is the one who not only has the ability to deliver you from the trial, but has the ability to walk with you and cover you in the midst of your trial. Okay? So we hang on. We just keep on hanging on to our strength and everything that the Lord has promised us. Okay? Let's pray. Father, I love you. Thank you so much for this night. And God, I just pray that you would apply your word to our hearts tonight. God, I pray that you would just make it awesome to us. That Father, from the time we go to bed tonight, when we wake up and we go through our days and months and years ahead of us, that God, we will remember that, Father, even if we have just a little bit of strength, that's all we need, because you multiply our strength. Father, I thank you for that. Let us walk with you. Let us constantly look to you, and let us bask in your awesomeness. And Lord, I pray that you will cause us to always see the opportunities and not the roadblocks. Father, I bless your people tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. For those of you that joined us tonight, trust this is a blessing to you. Have a great night, and we'll see you. Adios.